Just another good backup to have today, launching astronauts from this launch pad for the first time ever. T-minus 36 minutes and 20 seconds and counting. Just a little over a minute away from propellant load. A big milestone on our way to launching today. T0 is 1:17 and 21 seconds p.m. Eastern Time. It is an instantaneous window on our way. We have to go at that second today, or we don't go at all. And that's all because of the timing necessary to catch up to the International Space Station. T0 is the most efficient 1:17 time of 21 seconds to launch there, p.m. Eastern Time. It is an instantaneous window that you would have to on our way. We have to go at that launch propellant is needed for a lot of things. We don't go at all. Get the astronauts up, and that's all because of booster time as well. Necessary to catch up to the International
Space Station. We would like to think we are in charge.
T0 is the most efficient time of 21 seconds to launch there, p.m. Eastern Time. Let's listen in now as they. It is an instantaneous window that you would have to on our way. We have to go at that launch propellant is needed for a lot of things. We don't go at all. Get the astronauts up, and that's all because of booster time as well. Necessary to catch up to the International Space Station. Here we go.
We are in charge.
T0 is the most efficient time of 21 seconds to launch there, p.m. Eastern Time. Let's listen in now as they. It is an instantaneous window that you would have to on our way. We have to go at that launch propellant is needed for a lot of things.
Loading propellant is a dynamic operation.
Very dynamic operation when you start flowing, kerosene, highly refined kerosene, and then a little bit later, liquid oxygen.
That's right, yeah. So we'll be starting to load.
We've got them seated inside the SpaceX Dragon at the top of this rocket. Spacecraft called Freedom. Alexander Gorbunov, the mission specialist. Nick Hague, the commander. The launch team is now preparing to continue the propellant load.
That's right. Yeah, a little over a minute ago, we heard the start of propellant load. We'll be starting with stage 1, then stage 2.
Skipping a little bit forward once they launch, get into space, and arrive at the ISS. They've got some incredible science that they will be doing. Here's a closer look at how we're getting that science done.
The International Space Station isn't just a symbol. It's a powerhouse of cutting-edge science, constantly revealing secrets that defy Earth's limitations and drive us farther into the cosmos.
Our mission is research and science. We have experiments mounted on the outside of the station that are looking at Earth. We study our own bodies and how they react to space, to weightlessness, to radiation, and that helps not only us go on further in future missions, but also helps for medical research back home. And then we study lots of different things as well, like materials, combustion, all sorts of things that help us understand life back on Earth.
Yeah!
Microgravity doesn't play by the rules. It flips them upside down, transforming how liquids flow, how flames burn, and unraveling biological mysteries before our eyes.
I saw some heart tissues beating in space, and it was incredible.
So Tom, we see that top one beating. Looks like happy heart cells.
But we're not just along for the ride. We're explorers, diving headfirst into the challenge and harnessing the power of this unparalleled platform, just as we have been for decades. We're on a relentless quest for answers, seeking to understand the intricate workings of the human body in space and ensuring future crews stay safe on their daring journeys beyond Earth's orbit.
The human aspect of human space exploration is always going to be very important for decades to come.
And when it comes to technology, we're not waiting around. We're discovering new ways to grow crops in harsh environments and engineering innovations to tackle Earth's greatest challenges.
We have amazing technology that allows us to recycle water and create water for us to drink. It's delicious.
Microgravity isn't just a curiosity. It's a game changer in the fight against diseases back on Earth. paving the way for breakthroughs that benefit us all and enabling new economic opportunities in space.
Welcome Axiom 3 on board the International Space Station.
From our vantage point more than 200 miles above Earth, we are not just spectators. We're gaining unprecedented insights into the world we call home, and we're sharing our findings openly. We're not just achieving results today. We're sparking inspiration in future generations of explorers and embracing the power of global collaboration as we reach for the stars.
What was your favorite experiment on the International Space Station?
Toby, great question. My favorite experiment was the one that I got to eat. It was us growing hatch chili peppers in our plant habitat.
Station Huntsville on 2, we have video in Node 1. Look at those chili peppers.
And as we soar through space at 17,500 miles per hour, each moment is a step closer to unlocking the mysteries of our Earth, our universe, and propelling our pioneering spirit even farther into space. So come along for the ride aboard the International Space Station.
Well, you heard a moving and saw a moving tribute to the science that's going on board the
Startup Stage 1 cryo loading.
And there you heard the call out that we're now cryo-loading liquid oxygen into the Falcon 9 rocket. Another great milestone passed. T-minus 29 minutes and counting. And here's now more about the crew that's going into space today. U.S. Space Force Colonel Nick Hague is your Crew 9 commander. He was selected by NASA as an astronaut in 2013. This will be his second space flight to the International Space Station. In 2018, as we've mentioned, he and his Soyuz crewmate experienced a catastrophic rocket booster malfunction after launch. They were forced to abort but landed safely 5 months later. 5 months later, I should say, Hague launched on another Soyuz and served as flight engineer for Expeditions 59 and 60. He spent a total of 203 days in space and performed 3 spacewalks. The Kansas native is a test pilot and a distinguished graduate of the United States Air Force Academy. Nick spent 5 months in Iraq in support of Operation Iraqi Freedom. He voluntarily transferred from the United States Air Force to the U.S. Space Force in 2021 and is an active colonel. His wife, Katie, is a retired U.S. Air Force colonel, and they have 2 sons. This is Mission Specialist Alexander Gorbanov's first flight to space ever. He studied engineering with qualifications in spacecraft in upper stages from the Moscow Aviation Institute. Gorbanov graduated from the military department with a specialty in operation and repair of aircraft, helicopters, and aircraft engines. Before his cosmonaut selection in 2018, he worked as an engineer for a rocket space corporation and helped support cargo spacecraft launches from the Baikonur Cosmodrome.
Alexander and Nick are an excellent pair. They've trained together for a long time alongside Stephanie Wilson and myself.
Highly trained and ready to go. T-minus 27 minutes and counting until liftoff. Let's head back out to NASA's Megan Cruz, who's joined now by NASA Administrator Bill Nelson and Deputy Administrator Pam Melroy.
I am, and it's so great to have them here at Florida always. You know, Administrator, the weather seems to be improving, so we're hopefully poised to send another 2 astronauts to the International Space Station, where, of course, you know, we've had American astronauts there continuously for over 20 years. Talk to us about how international partnerships really help with American ingenuity in space.
Well, first of all, it shows that we are looking beyond our borders because we need our friends out there in other countries, and they have contributed greatly to this program. So, for example, on the big rocket that's going to go to the moon, it has the European support module from the European Space Agency. On our space station, there were originally about 15 international partners. Mm-hmm. And the number of countries that have used the space station is upwards of plus 40. So it is very much an international space program, and that's why it's called the International Space Station.
And actually, I'm going to ask you one more question since we're talking about how the International Space Station is really a test bed for us as we return back to the moon, go farther to Mars. Let's talk about the Artemis 2 mission. Are there any updates for that as we look forward to sending 4 astronauts to orbit the moon?
Well, we are looking forward to the next flight. Reed Wiseman is the commander. They're going to do everything in preparation for the 3rd Artemis, which will be the one that will go into lunar orbit, hook up with a SpaceX lander, and we will have then the first woman and the next man will walk on the moon.
Yeah, something exciting to look forward to. Now, Deputy Administrator, let's go back and talk about Crew 9 now. So, we're launching with 2 empty seats. That's so NASA astronauts Butch Wilmore and Sunny Williams can return with Nick and Alexander early next year. What have Butch and Sunny been able to accomplish on the ISS since they got there in June?
Well, the good news is having 2 extra sets of hands means more than 80 hours a week of extra work that can go into critical science, but also maintaining the station. So they have really contributed. Crew time is really precious on orbit. It feels like there's never enough. Yeah. But I would like to highlight a couple of experiments that they have been working on that I think are exciting, both because of how they impact future spaceflight, but also people here on Earth. So the plant management, a water management experiment, which is testing different techniques for transporting water to plants. Now, in space, in microgravity, water doesn't flow the same way without gravity to take care of it. But what's interesting is not only will that help us when we go to the moon and we go on to Mars, the ability to grow our own plants, but it also affects hydroponic systems here on Earth. The other experiment that I think is really significant is looking at taking some tissue cultures of the bone marrow that creates platelets, right? Very important in our blood system. And they're going to grow them in cultures. And part of that is to look at blood clotting and how those cells develop and how it might work in space.
Right.
But it also is going to help us understand blood clots better here in gravity by being able to compare the two.
I know,
so they are
great
doing
experiments.
very significant science.
Yeah, it's always so great to have veteran astronauts there as well. All right, so let's head back over now to our commentators in Hawthorne, California. Thank you both.
Thank you, Megan. As we continue to count down, let's take a closer look at the vehicles that will be taking Crew 9 to the International Space Station today. Falcon 9 is a 2-stage rocket developed and manufactured by SpaceX, known for its safe access to space. It's also the first and currently the only orbital class rocket capable of reflight. Sitting at the top of Falcon 9, Dragon and its trunk stand over 26 feet tall. There are 2 windows on the spacecraft, plus 1 under the nose cone. Nose cone opens shortly after launch to expose the forward bulkhead thrusters and docking mechanism.
Since 2020, when Dragon became the first private spacecraft to take over 47 launches and flown 54 astronauts, representing 14 experiments. Altogether, the reusable Dragon spacecraft have completed 8 human spaceflight missions on behalf of NASA and visited the station 42 times under NASA's commercial resupply and commercial crew programs.
And through all of that, Dragon has proven to be quite a versatile spacecraft. It can autonomously dock to the space station when outfitted with the ISS docking adapter, as it is for today's flight. When not going to the space station and in free flyer mode, The docking adapter can be swapped out for a cupola. Then, of course, you have our newest option, the Skywalker hardware, to support extravehicular activities, which the crew just used for the first time during Polaris Dawn. Continuing down the vehicle, we have the second stage. The second stage is powered by a single Merlin vacuum or MVAC engine, and this engine is optimized to perform in the vacuum of space. After stage separation, the MVAC will ignite and carry Dragon to its target orbit. The Falcon 9's first and second stages are connected by the black interstage, which houses the MVAC engine and the systems that decoupled the two stages during stage separation. Below that, of course, is the first stage, which is powered by 9 Merlin engines. These 9 Merlin engines provide the initial thrust to lift Falcon 9 off the pad and clearing the tower through the lower, thicker parts of the Earth's atmosphere. Each of these 9 Merlin 1D engines delivers about 190,000 pounds of thrust at sea level, and that gives Falcon 9 a combined 1.7 million pounds of thrust.
After stage separation, Stage 1 will return to Earth for recovery and reuse on a future mission using a combination of the Merlin sea-level engines and the 4 titanium grid fins located near the top of the booster, which will guide it during its re-entry and landing. The Falcon 9 first stage is also equipped with 4 landing legs that deploy just before landing to allow for a vertical touchdown on either a drone ship or a landing pad. And today we'll be attempting to land this booster at Landing Zone 1 back at Cape Canaveral Space Force Station. The second stage will power Dragon into its initial low Earth orbit before separating, leaving Dragon to continue its journey to the space station using its own thrusters. About 40 seconds after separation, Dragon's nose cone deploy sequence will begin.
And watch the countdown. Our teams are prepping the vehicle for flight. Propellant loading of both RP-1 and liquid oxygen began at T-minus 35 minutes. We also heard the call out that the launch escape system is now armed. The launch escape system is designed to propel Dragon away from Falcon 9 in the event of an emergency during launch. The range, which is monitoring the keep-out zones, among other key flight requirements, also continues to report no issues, and they are go to support today's launch. As you heard earlier, weather is also looking good, and we are still tracking roughly a 30% chance of violation at our target liftoff time. But we are optimistic that we're going to have good conditions at that T0. Now, as a reminder, today we have an instantaneous launch window driven by our planned rendezvous point, the point at which Dragon and station will meet in orbit. The space station is currently orbiting the Earth at more than 17,000 miles per hour, and Dragon needs to catch up to it. That means we have to deliver Dragon to the correct orbit by timing its trajectory relative to the orbiting laboratory so that they are in the same place in space at the same time. A precise liftoff time is crucial for hitting that rendezvous point. Of course, that means that at this point, if we hear a hold for any reason, we'll have to stand down and target our backup opportunity.
The team in Mission Control Houston, the team in Hawthorne, and the astronauts aboard the space station will track the autonomous docking of Dragon Freedom on Sunday when they enter joint operations. This will happen when the spacecraft enters the approach ellipsoid, the invisible boundary that helps us monitor arriving and departing spacecraft. Once docked, Dragon Freedom's crew will perform a series of leak checks, then work to open the spacecraft's hatch before floating into the station.
Well, we're looking pretty good, Nilifer, and thank you very much. Weather improving here at the Kennedy Space Center. If you're just joining us, we are 16 minutes and 37 seconds away from the launch of the 9th astronaut rotation mission to the International Space Station under NASA's commercial
Stage 2 LOX load has started.
And there you heard Stage 2 LOX load has begun, the final loading of propellants into the Falcon 9 rocket. Commander Nick Hague and Mission Specialist Alexander Gorbunov are strapped into their seats inside Dragon Freedom. As you can see right there, the Falcon 9 rocket fueling operation well underway. The launch escape system is armed, and that means Dragon is prepared to launch itself away from the Falcon 9 in case of an emergency. So far, operations look and sound as expected, and we are counting down to liftoff at 1:17 and 21 seconds p.m. Eastern Time. And I want to welcome in a special guest here on set now. NASA astronaut Stephanie Wilson is here, joining us alongside Zena Cardman, both of you NASA astronauts. It is so good to have you both here. You both trained for Crew 9. This is where you probably expected to be on this day. but you have accepted this role of supporting your friends for launch. And as they get ready to launch with 15 minutes left to go, Stephanie, question for you. What is the mindset of the crew that you trained with? You've flown into space 3 times on the space shuttle. What's the mindset of the crew right now?
Well, thank you, Daryl, and thank you, Zena, for having me join you today. And yes, both Zena and I have trained for a year and a half with Nick and Alex. They have trained hard. They are well prepared. In this moment where they are strapped inside the vehicle with just the 2 of them, they are reviewing procedures. They have trained for this moment. They are ready to execute the mission. They are, of course, looking forward to the work that's ahead of them on the International Space Station. Perhaps a little bit sad to be leaving family and friends, but they'll be talking to them soon once they have docked to the International Space Station. But it's a moment to review all of the hard work that has gone into this moment in the preparation and to be ready to execute the mission, which they will do very well.
Speaking of hard work, you both trained for Crew 9 for a year and a half. And so from a human level, we know you are professional astronauts. Your seats were needed for Butch and Sunny to bring them back. What was it like for you personally when you learned that you wouldn't be flying today, but you would be flying some other time, but not today?
Yeah, gosh, Daryl, I think I felt a lot of emotion when I saw Stephanie walking through the door there. It's bittersweet, but it's a really beautiful thing. I think any launch is a testament to the power of collaboration, and this launch maybe even more so than usual. I think from my perspective, it's a privilege and a choice to take part in something that's larger than yourself, and that's a choice that I make today and the next day and the next day. So in this moment, it's feeling exciting, it's feeling bittersweet, but for the most part, I'm feeling a lot of joy and pride in our space program, and so excited for our crew members, especially Alexander. This is his first launch to space. Nick, this will be his second mission to the International Space Station. It's going to be a beautiful day. And I think
for you, Steph?
Yes, very, very similar. I think that we all train together. Adaptability and flexibility is key as we look across our corps. You know, we all train for various roles, and we select people that can serve in various roles and can be seamlessly thrown into different roles. And excited for them. We're always excited for our colleagues to have an opportunity to be together. We have built friendship and camaraderie and learned for the roles for the Crew Dragon and for the International Space Station. But I'm very excited for them, looking forward to hearing their stories from space and for seeing them launch.
And that launch just 12 minutes away, a little over 12 and a half minutes away, the Falcon 9 rocket. Well, this is a booster that can be reused more than a few times with minimal maintenance. At the time that this launch happens, it will be flying over the International Space Station, rather, will be flying 260 statute miles over northeast Bulgaria. Crew 9 will then spend the next 28 hours or so chasing down the International Space Station for a rendezvous currently targeted for September 29th at 5:30 p.m. And we'll have live coverage on NASA TV of docking, which will arrive when it does dock, about 2 hours before. And so I want to thank Stephanie Wilson for coming in and joining us. We really appreciate your time and being here. Thank you so much for sharing your thoughts with us. As we continue to count down, T-minus 11 minutes and 42 seconds and counting.
We are part of this mission, this Crew 9 mission, and we're so proud to be part of the team that got this Dragon Freedom, Nick Hague and Alexander Gorbanov, ready for flight today. Thinking about another minute or so, we'll hear the next expected call that the crew displays are configured for launch. We'll hopefully hear at that point some great words from our commander.
That's right. Nick Hague is going to have some words for us, so we're going to tune into that. And you and I will join Stephanie outside and watch your friends launch to space. In the meantime, let's send it out to SpaceX in California.
Dragon, SpaceX. Confirm crew displays are configured for launch.
So good news there from Mission Control. And our next major countdown event will be around the...
And SpaceX Freedom. We can confirm our displays are configured for launch. I'd also like to take the opportunity to thank the entire team around the world for your hard work and dedication to get us to this point. Alex and I are ready and honored to represent you and ever.
Really exciting commentary there from Commander Nick Hague. And with that, we are just about 9.5 minutes to launch. And right now, the Falcon 9 launch commit criteria are being checked by our onboard computers. Those launch commit criteria are specific thresholds and data that tell us that the rocket is healthy. There are many systems in place to ensure that the rocket and crew are both safe leading up to liftoff and during flight. And now that we're approaching terminal count, our teams are performing those final checks.
Just coming up on 9 minutes before launch right now, we just heard from Commander Nick Hague. He and Alexander Gorbanov are suited. They are seated in Dragon Freedom there, as you can see on the screen. We have teams here at Mission Control Hawthorne monitoring the vehicle, both Dragon and Falcon 9. Meanwhile, in Houston, as we heard from Nilifer, some of those teams in console positions are keeping tabs on the space station, its reboost capabilities, making sure everything is looking good for Dragon's arrival tomorrow. We're looking at about a 9-minute ride to orbit today, and that's the point that the second stage will cut off. After that, Dragon and the second stage will continue to coast for another few minutes, and then they will separate. You'll be hearing some performance calls as we get into this final countdown, and then after liftoff. These are SpaceX flight controllers reporting on trajectory, speed, booster performance, and other key milestones. And there are also some other calls you'll hear the crew make after liftoff. The crew will report out on a few number and letter combinations, and these mark different abort zones through the flight up the eastern seaboard. The first two are 1A and 1B, and these are available when the first stage is firing. The next are 2A through 2E. Those will come into play once the second stage kicks in, but we will only hear the call for 2A. Diverting a little bit from the other naming system, you will also hear the call Shannon, and that refers to Shannon, Ireland. That means the crew could target off the coast of Ireland if they needed to abort later in the second stage burn. Again, you'll hear these calls throughout the flight uphill, along with the key performance callouts from the guidance, navigation, and control officer, as well as the propulsion lead.
One of the next callouts we're listening for in our countdown is the announcement that Stage 1 engine chill has started, which is one of the key processes that prepares the engines on board our first stage for flight. Right now, propellant in the tanks is isolated from the engines, but at T-minus 7 minutes, we'll open the engine pre-valves and start passing just a trickle of liquid oxygen through the Merlin engine.
Chill has started.
Confirmation there that engine chill has started. Now, we do this because the super chilled and densified liquid oxygen on board is really, really cold. So we use the process to bring that engine hardware down to a cooler temperature before flowing all of the LOX and propellant into it during flight. At liftoff, Falcon 9 is consuming 700 gallons of fuel per second. So engine chill helps us to prevent thermal shock and ensures nominal engine performance. The next thing we're listening in for is the confirmation that RP1 load has been completed on board Stage 1.
RP1 is that densified kerosene or rocket fuel that propels the crew into orbit. That RP1 liquid propellant needs an oxidizer to combine with in order to ignite. Coming up next at the 5-minute mark, we'll hear the call for Dragon to see it swing open completely at the moment of liftoff. We'll continue to check through a couple more fueling milestones, including one around the 2-minute mark.